folks. Welcome in. It's another brand new edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast. And as you can tell, I'm not alone today. We're joined by our good friend, Bluff City Media's own Kenny Stubblefield. Kenny, how you doing?
Man, I'm well, dude. I know we wanted to talk about some pretty serious things today. So you needed to bring in the big guns, the real soccer knowledge of Bluff City Media. You needed to bring in today.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm here. I'm here to actually provide some soccer insight to this podcast. No, I'm just joking.
And we appreciate that.
Lawrence, you do a fantastic job, bro. I just want to state that from the very jump. You have done an amazing job with 901 FC, with the Lady Tigers, men's Tigers. You've done such a good job covering it all. You've traveled across the country covering soccer stuff this season. Just kudos to you, man. You do a fantastic job.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. So this is one I've been kind of looking forward to for a while, and this was something I felt like I would need somebody to kind of bounce these ideas off of, because sometimes, you know, I get, it gets a little bit echo chambery when it's just me, and,
Right.
and you know, everything sounds good at here when I don't have anybody to give any kind of pushback or offer any type of counterpoints. You know what I'm trying to say.
That's what I'm here for.
It's good to have more than just one voice.
That is what I'm here for. I'm here to push back.
So this is going to be a college soccer themed episode of the 901 Soccer Podcast.
Right.
Obviously, the programs at the University of Memphis are both doing very well. Although I guess, unfortunately, as of the time of this recording, we might as well go ahead and get the bad news out of the way first.
Yeah.
The Memphis Tigers women's team, unfortunately, fell today in the AAC tournament final down in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, which I had to look up where that is. It's looks like it's halfway between Tampa and Sarasota. And
where's Tampa and Sarasota? I have no clue. Where is that in Florida?
That is on the about halfway down on the west side, on the Gulf
Gotcha.
side.
There you go. Okay.
You know, everything south of there is Miami.
Right.
So unfortunately, they were looking for a four-peat today, and that was something I was like, I can't imagine. And even as good as they've been, that's something that happens too terribly often in the sport is teams four-peating as conference champions. And then the game before that was Florida State in the ACC tournament final. That was their fifth straight ACC championship.
That's unbelievable.
That is a dynasty powerhouse program they got down there in Tallahassee, and I guess we could tie in with that a little bit later. But that's five straight conference championships, and they've won, I think, 4 of the last 10 national titles.
Well, I guess Memphis now has two things in common with Florida State, and that's that we have shared we have our Eskimo cousins with Florida State, with our head football coach, and it sounds to me like the most successful team at Florida State in their sports, in their athletic department, is the women's soccer team, just like at Memphis, right?
They're doing pretty well, but unfortunately, that was not entirely the case today.
No,
they fell to East Carolina in the AAC tournament final today, and you know it's disappointing. But I think there's still there was some doubt on Twitter about whether this was a must-win game, feeling that they needed to get the auto bid. But the commentators on the game for ESPNU,
yes,
they brought up Memphis's RPI, and they felt like, yeah, they're probably safely in as an at-large team. And
but your counterpoint to it is interesting though, because last year, let's take last year for they were 18-1 last year.
18-1.
Won
Their
the
only loss
championship.
was on the road at a ranked Alabama team who had gone to this Final Four the year before,
and it was
that was the only loss.
It was a controversial loss. Let's not didn't they get wasn't there a free kick or something like that?
If memory serves, there was a questionable penalty call late in the game. There was either one that was called that was questionable or one that wasn't called that was questionable. I don't remember exactly.
There was a questionable call to change the dynamics of that game. Yeah.
And they were a 6 seed as a 18-1 conference division tournament, regular season, all of it. Their only loss on the road at a ranked power conference team. And Coach Brooks Monaghan always does a good job in loading up the schedule. One or two things different this year compared to last year. They dropped a couple of draws at home, one of them against East Carolina, and then the home finale against Tulsa. So those hurt. And then they lost a game, as in not that they lost as the result, as in the game was not on the schedule anymore, against UT Martin, and that may or may not help the RPI, but that's just more than likely an extra W in the win column, which is never a bad thing.
Right.
And that one there was too much. The fields were just overly saturated, and they were just like, we're not going to play this game.
Right.
And then they did have a little bit. They were very good, very healthy last year. Had a little bit of injury problem this year. They lost Izzy Monk, one of the veterans from last year's team. I think it might have been in that draw against East Carolina earlier, if I'm not mistaken. But I think she had several broken ribs or something. They're like a fairly serious injury.
Wow.
She's out. So impressive to. I mean, they only lost heading into today. They'd only lost one game this year,
Right.
and that was on the road at Tennessee. And that's one that I'm sure Tiger fans were like, man, we'd love to beat Tennessee,
Yeah.
but. So I think they're probably still in good shape to get an at-large bid, but it is Memphis and it is the NCAA, and so you can't. I'll believe it when I see it, I guess, right? I wouldn't pencil it in just quite yet, but I think they've done enough. I think they've also. You don't ever like to like people act like this isn't a thing, but selection committee capital, like, okay, we don't think maybe you should be this high. Go out and prove it. And Memphis has the last 3 years they've advanced in the NCAA tournament. So it's not a question of, yeah, they might be an at-large team, but they'll probably just get smoked in the first round. That's not the case here.
Yeah, they've done well.
Yeah. So that's the depressing part of today is they did not four-peat as AAC tournament champions. On a brighter side, on the Tiger men's side, they will be hosting, as both men and women were the regular season AAC champion.
Which, let's be frank, the start of the season did not bode well for the men's team. Like the fact that they came back and got the number one seed in this tournament is crazy impressive.
It is. They got off to a rough start. Like it was bad. I mean, they were getting fairly comprehensively beaten at home by Evansville, by Central Arkansas, by Northern. No, I think they beat Northern Illinois, but I think they started off like 1-5, not too terribly different from the way Memphis 901 FC started their season. And 901 FC got it turned around, and Coach Mulrooney found a way to get this team turned around. And they had a big win, top 10 ranked home win over Charlotte. And there was a stretch. I think they went 7, 8, maybe 9 games unbeaten. The Memphis men's team did, and as a result of that excellent run of form, they're the regular season AAC champions. And as a result, they get to host the semifinals and the final of the AAC tournament. That's the semifinals are on Wednesday. I don't remember who the other side of the bracket is, but I believe the Tigers get FIU, who they just went on the road and got a draw with. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. And then regardless of whether the Tigers prevail or not, the final will be out at South Campus on Saturday. Obviously, it'd be much more fun and much better for us if the Tigers were to get to that game. But all the kudos in the world to Coach Mulrooney. The Tigers men's team, the AAC regular season awards, they cleaned up. They had a lot of first team guys, coaching staff of the year, fair play award. They cleaned up at the awards. So good times going on over at South Campus for both the soccer programs.
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule for the AAC men's soccer soccer. They call it the men's soccer championship. The semifinals are on Wednesday, November 13th. Number 3 Charlotte versus number 2 South Florida at 3:30. It'll be on ESPN Plus, and then immediately afterwards. Well, I guess not immediately. At 7 p.m. On the same night, number 5 FIU versus number 1 Memphis. So, and that'll be on ESPN Plus as well.
Now they are the number 1 overall seed, but we referenced just the bad start they got off to, and I do believe this is probably a case. If they want to get in, they got to win this thing.
Oh, I would suspect they would have to.
I think they're only a game over 500, like purely win-loss record-wise. But so I think they do probably. But you know what? They've been to the last 2 NCAA tournaments, and they won their first ever NCAA tournament game last year. And in my notes here, that is something we're going to touch on.
Let's do it.
So the overall, obviously, you couldn't get into what we wanted to discuss without discussing the Tigers and all the stuff that they got going on. But the overall premise of this particular episode of the 901 Soccer Podcast is that I believe college soccer is the perfect vehicle for getting non-soccer fans into watching soccer. And I've got a variety of reasons why. Some of them maybe not, but I've got one really big one that I think is very important. So just right off the bat, before we get into the nuts, what's your thought on this?
Yeah, no, I look at it like this, Lawrence. I take everything by, if you want to get a someone to love soccer, right? You've got to start them pretty early, I would say. Any sport, really, like any sport that a person grows up loving to watch or loving to be involved in, it's because they're either playing it or because they've fallen in love with it. They go see, the games, things like that. I always look at my own family, right? Like I look at my daughter. My daughter is 12 years old and has been playing volleyball now for 2 seasons. And she has fallen in love with volleyball. Mm-hmm. And her first year of club volleyball was last year. And this club that she was a part of would consistently bring out with NIL opportunities, Memphis women's volleyball players to do clinics at their club. And my daughter has participated in pretty much every single one of those clinics that were provided by this club and the University of Memphis within their NIL, opportunities for these players. And I just, like, she is now wants to go watch them play all the time. Mm-hmm. She wants to go and see them all the time. And it's because she's been able to actually be there with them, right? Like be there.
Experience and access
to those players. And the fact that they represent the university here in the city is a big deal as well. So yeah, I don't have any pushback in that regard. I think I have a lot of thoughts that I want to share, but I want to I want to bounce it back to you and just say, yes, I do not off the top disagree with college soccer being the perfect vehicle to introduce non-soccer fans into watching soccer. I just think that's a great vehicle to do that.
And just to clarify for some that are out there in listener land, this isn't about player development, moving from one level to the next. This isn't, because the college soccer system in terms of a development system is much maligned. There's a variety of reasons for that. Obviously, there's restrictions by the NCAA on how much time you can actually spend practicing. There's the fact that usually by the time you're college age, if you have gone the professional route, you've gone into an academy, and by 18, 19 years old, it's probably already known whether you're going to be a good professional player or not. So we're not, from that aspect. One example is former U.S. men's national team coach Jurgen Klinsmann, both while he was the U.S. manager and then very recently in a CBS Kicking It podcast episode on CBS Sports, he said, look, one of the problems with soccer development in this country is there's too much emphasis on going to college and getting a scholarship to go play in college and get taken in the MLS Super Draft. And so we're not there. There's a lot of issues with college soccer in terms of development, player development, but we're trying to talk fan development here. So right. I was trying to forestall that, because I know once this hits the soccer Twitter universe, people are going to go with the torches and the pitchforks and the anger. And I'm like, no, not what we're doing here today, guys.
This is about fans. This is about developing a fan base.
100%. Correct.
Yes.
So the first point that I've got, and this isn't the main one, is the second point that I've got, but the first one is, what is one thing that people that don't watch soccer, when they first start trying to get into it, maybe it's during the World Cup, maybe there's a USA game on, but whatever. What is one of the things that drives non-soccer people absolutely crazy about soccer? The clock counts up and it doesn't stop. So in college soccer, that is not the case. In college soccer, it counts down, doesn't go up, it goes down. So you do have a definite, finite, identified amount of time remaining in the game. And there are also stoppages. If there's an injury, the referee does like this, and that tells the clock operator to stop the clock. There's also substituted players. In a professional game, once you get subbed out, you're done till the next game or till whenever. in college soccer. They just changed the rules, and I'm not exactly sure what those changes were. I know it was a nightmare for the referees to try to keep track of, but I think it's maybe per half. Once you get subbed out, you can't come back in that half, but don't hold me to that. But you can come back into the game. If you get substituted out, you can come back into the game. So it's not, oh, we had to take them off 30 minutes into the game, and so we were done after that. No, that's not the case. You've also got the season is much shorter. Now they've tried experimenting with the spring college season, but the real college soccer season, it starts in August, and the national championship is handed out late November, early December. So whereas a professional season goes 9, 10, maybe 11 months if your team's really good, you've got 3 to 4 months for college soccer. So it's not nearly as much time and commitment as much for people to keep track of. So if you're just trying to get into the game, trying to keep track of 12 different, the regular season playoffs, Open Cup, Leagues Cup, all of these types of competitions that all these professional clubs play, it's just University of Memphis has a game tonight. Done. And then one thing, and you can say this for every sport in the world, every sport, every league, everywhere, is it seems like prices are going nowhere but up. So many teams are so bad, and yet their ticket prices just keep going up, 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 up.
Right.
Not the case with college soccer, because most of these games are either, if they're not affordable, they're free entirely. That's the University of Memphis. The men's and women's games are both free. All you have to do is just walk in the door. They've got a guy making sure you don't bring an umbrella in. But other than that, you just walk in, you show up, you don't need a ticket, you can just go. Now, in the last couple of years, there have been NCAA tournament games there, and those are $10, and you can sit wherever. So that's my first point, is just some of the differences between college soccer and pro soccer. My theory here is that it's not as much of a shock to the American sporting fan system.
Right. Because I think that is, like, as somebody who did not grow up watching soccer, did not grow up playing soccer, basketball was my sport, baseball, those were my two sports. I do think that in a lot of ways, the international rules in the professional world and in the World Cup, Olympics, those kinds of, in the professional world, really, they're quite confusing. And if you don't understand them, it can be almost a detriment, I think, in terms of like turning it on and going, okay, I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Like, at its base knowledge, we know it's about just scoring goals. It's about defending. It's about offense and defense. Just like in any sport, it's about offense and defense. But I do think that in a lot of college sports, like the college rules that are in place mimic more of the sports that non-soccer fans watch. They kind of mimic more of those rules. They kind of, look more identical to that. And so because of that, it makes more sense, right? Like even in my brain, seeing a countdown instead of a clock going up in time makes more sense to me. Makes more sense to my brain as a basketball fan of just watching the clock go down. It just makes more sense. So
that has lent itself to, I think, here in the last 2 weeks, a couple of viral college soccer moments on Twitter with buzzer-beating goals.
Right.
I think Notre Dame was playing a game against Stanford, and it's tied, and Stanford just, with the last kick of the game, is just like, to hell with it, and just boots it from midfield as the clock hit 0. I don't know what Notre Dame's goalkeeper was doing, but the ball goes into the net, and Stanford gets the win on the road. And everybody, I think you can find that clip, whoever was calling that game for ESPN Plus or whatever, might have had a stroke or an aneurysm or a heart attack or all three, because that's just something that is truly bonkers. A, to score a goal from that far out, and B, do it as the clock is expiring. And then in the Big East tournament, I forget who the opponent was, but Georgetown scored a goal as time expired in the first half of their Big East tournament game. And that's not to say at the professional level with the clock counting up that there is not late drama in the game. That's not the point here. But this were two specific examples that I was able to come up with that tied into how people can get on board with, hey, the clock is counting down, here's these crazy moments because the clock just hit 0.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that there is an opportunity for United States Soccer, the United States Soccer Federation, to take a look at what it looks like to build a fan base in the United States when it comes to soccer? Do you think that there would even be a conversation around maybe not copying the rules of the Premier League and copying the rules of the International Soccer Federation, the Olympic rules, those kinds of things, the substitution rules, the clocks, the things like that, and make it more look like the college game in order to kind of make it look more, God, it sounds so terrible, make it look more American in terms of the way that the rules are played out? Is there even a conversation? And is that something that would change do you think that would, if they were to do that, if it were to make it uniform along the lines of yes, and in the United States pro leagues, in the United States Soccer Federation, this is what we do here. It might not be the same internationally, but this is what we do here.
I don't think that's a conversation that could or would happen. And to be perfectly candid, I don't think that's a conversation that should happen either.
Okay. Yeah.
I
just wonder if in a lot of ways you are battling against, like, we look at other countries and say, look at the way that these countries have accepted soccer. And in a lot of ways, it's because they grow up, like these kids grow up playing the game. It's been more of a part of their culture than it has been in the United States. But I wonder if, like, one of the issues that I see in a lot of ways is like this. It's why I appreciated the XFL so much, because they tried so hard. They didn't try to compete with the NFL. They weren't trying to supplant the NFL as the professional football league in the United States of America. They came in and said, we're going to be an alternative at a different time period during a different part of the year. And we're going to change the rules up to make it more like, to look different, to where it's like it attracts a different, like, I've got to see this because this could either be awesome or really bad. And I'm wondering if that could be potentially an issue that we're seeing in the United States, is that we try too hard to copy the international rule or the international leagues and the Premier League and go, let's try to rival those fan bases. Like, we want to try to be like Spain, or we want to try to be like Brazil or Mexico when it comes to their rabidness around soccer. And it's like, man, that's just not, copying those leagues. They've got too much, I guess, market share in terms of the fan base, right? Like, just do your own thing. Like, do your own thing and build a fan base off of that. Does that make sense?
I get what you're saying, and I don't know that I could disagree with it more. Because we do, if we were having this conversation in 1999 or 2000, I think your points would hold a little bit more weight than they do now. The American soccer public that we do have is much larger, A, than it used to be, and B, is much more savvy and sophisticated than it used to be. Like, there's plenty, and there's a number of MLS teams with very passionate, very diehard fan bases: Atlanta, right, Columbus, Seattle, Portland, LAFC, just to name a few, Kansas City, St. Louis, Nashville. But I don't think that's, to that point. It's funny, when Major League Soccer first started in '96, they didn't have the games end in ties. They did a hockey style penalty shootout. They didn't go kicks from the mark like soccer. They would have a player get the ball at midfield and dribble in on the goal, and the goalie would come out.
That's wild.
That's wild. I mean, it is funny to go back and watch, and that's not, in the grand scheme of things, that long ago. And it is kind of wild. I'm sure it made for, it's funny to watch now, but I feel like if that was something that somebody at US Soccer, at MLS, wherever, I don't think those are ideas that would get very far off the ground.
How did the fan base how did fans react to that?
Well, that was something, again, in 1996, there wasn't much of an American soccer fan base. Okay. So that's why they did that, is because we've got an American, we have a an American soccer public that really only became aware of the game 2 years ago when the United States hosted the World Cup. So they had to Americanize it to try to get people more on board with it.
Right.
And at the professional level, I don't know that that's been necessary probably in 30 years or since that time, which is why I feel like the college route it's different enough, but it's not so radically different that it's Americanized enough that people that don't watch the game can get into it.
Yeah.
And it's similar enough to professional soccer where if somebody were to make the full-on transition from non-soccer fan to college soccer fan to soccer fan,
yeah,
it wouldn't that's an easier transition, I think.
Yeah. I think we are nitpicking this point.
I think a little bit, yeah, but that's okay.
But that's okay. And I want to reiterate, I am not as tapped into soccer culture the way that you are. And so if I present ideas tonight, like soccer world, don't it's Lawrence Dockery like that. I'm going to present some ideas. He's going to shoot them down, and that's totally cool. Cause I would never have claimed to be a guy who understands soccer culture. So if I say some things that offend soccer the soccer world, don't hold it against Lawrence Dockery. So,
but here's the thing. This is why I think that having this particular podcast on the topic of college soccer is the perfect time to do that, because it's nothing you don't have to change anything,
right?
Because there's already this vehicle already exists, I think.
Right. Got you. Yep.
So that's the first point. So, the clock counting up instead of counting down, stoppages, players re-entering, that sort of thing. Another little, whoops, I do believe I hit the wrong button. One thing that I do want to kind of point out is that at the college level, you'd be surprised at how many top-notch, high-dollar facilities some of these college soccer programs have. Maybe not so much at the University of Memphis, but
it's coming. It's coming.
That is courtesy of when we all the thoughts out to Liza Fletcher's family for providing that. And
shout out to them, man. Amazing.
Yes, absolutely. And that was one that I did not know that she played for Coach Monaghan at the U of M.
Yep.
That was just a name that I knew from tragedy on the news. That was not anything that I was aware of in a larger context. So when they pulled us aside and said, "Hey, be on the lookout. We got this really cool announcement coming up." And so, but larger picture, college soccer is most of these schools have insanely profitable football programs, as in American football, and you get the trickle down. I mean, that is why that so many of these schools like Ohio State or LSU or Alabama or whoever, Texas, can continue to keep all of the other sports is because their football programs are so insanely expensive. And when people, rich people with lots of money love doing stuff to let you know that they have lots of money. And so they pay $7 million to slap their name on a soccer stadium or whatever. So the facilities in college soccer, you'd be surprised, are on par or better even than some, maybe not MLS, but some of the teams in the lower division of American soccer. The facilities, be it training, weight room, locker rooms, stadium, whatever, the facilities at some of these college soccer programs are quite impressive. But the big thing, and this is the biggest thing that I think about why I think this is the perfect vehicle, is as a soccer guy, whenever there's the World Cup or, like I remember when Memphis 901 FC first started, people would come up to me and go, "Hey, I'm kind of excited about the World Cup, or 901 FC's got Memphis got a soccer team now, but who should I cheer for? What MLS team should I cheer for? What Premier League team? Who should I watch in your?" Okay, so it's a lot of it does get boiled down to, as a soccer person, non-soccer people will come up and ask me, who should I cheer for? Well, you already have, with college soccer, you have a built-in, a brand that people are familiar with, and like we touched on when you were talking about your daughter's volleyball, that you have access to.
Right.
Right. So if you are somebody in Starkville, Mississippi, Clemson, South Carolina, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, South Bend, Indiana, wherever, you might not have a professional team to latch onto. Not necessarily the case here in Memphis. We do have a professional team for people to latch onto. They just won't do it. Different discussion for a different day. But you can get behind your college team. It's already the team that you cheer for on Saturdays for football and in March for your basketball team.
Yep.
And then in certain places in June for your baseball team. So why not August to November get behind your soccer team? It's brand. It's the biggest thing to me. It's a brand that you are already familiar with and already support. So why not get behind you? If you're looking to get into soccer, if you're one of those people, like the World Cup's coming to the U.S. in 2 years, in less than 2 years. So you're going to be watching the World Cup going, this is awesome. I'm into this. I've got World Cup fever. I got soccer fever. Who should I support? Well, I noticed you live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Arkansas has a really good women's soccer program over there. You should probably get behind them. Some of these schools, in the SEC, believe it or not, there are only 2 SEC schools that have a men's soccer program, and they do not compete in the SEC. It's Kentucky and South Carolina, and I believe they compete in the Sun Belt. I think with them being so heavily invested in the football, I do believe it is a Title IX issue. But you're fortunate at a school like the University of Memphis, you have a men's and a women's team, and they're both pretty good. But regardless of that, I'll let you pick it up here. It's just brand familiarity, I think, is very important. And if you're already an Alabama fan or an LSU fan or a Notre Dame fan or Ohio State or UCLA or whoever, that's your team. That's who you can get behind.
And I think I said a few minutes ago we were nitpicking that first point. And I think the reason why I called it nitpicking is because this is the main point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like brand familiarity kind of being baked into our culture of I'm already a University of Memphis Tiger fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily that is the main point of this entire podcast to me. And this is why I believe your statement of college soccer being the perfect vehicle to introduce new fans to soccer is this is the main point, right? Like, I'll give you for instance, I don't watch Premier League. I don't watch any international soccer, anything like that. But let me tell you what, man, when the Olympics happen every 4 years and when the World Cup happens and when the University of Memphis is on, I watch soccer. And because it's the name on the front of the kit, right? Like it's the name on the front of the jersey. It is Memphis or United States or you're not going to see me cheer for the Nashville MLS team. I'm not really that into it. I love the 901 FC atmosphere because it's got Memphis on the front of it, right? Like I'll go to those games. I enjoy those games. And it's because I am cheering for a Memphis team because I am from Memphis and I love all things Memphis. And so as a fan of Memphis in general, I will take my time and my money and I will go and I will watch anything that has to do with Memphis. And so when you've got Lady Tigers on a Sunday afternoon, Lady Tiger soccer on a Sunday afternoon playing on ESPN Plus, when you've got volleyball on Sunday afternoon playing on ESPN Plus, I will absolutely tune in to it because it's Memphis, because I see that Tiger logo slapped on the front of the ESPN Plus watch page. Like I will absolutely watch it. And so I think that is where, and this is the perfect example. Like, and I know this is not a podcast that talks about NIL very often. But this is why NIL is so important. It's for teams like this. It's for soccer teams like the ladies Tigers team and the men's Tiger team. And it's for the kids that play in these kinds of sports, because it's not only the brand familiarity, but it's the access to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, like, that is what makes NIL so important, not just for the football players, not just for the basketball players, not just for the baseball players, but for all the Olympic sports that happen at the University of Memphis, because you get access to these guys, to these ladies, that is just unmatched in any other way. And I think that it is, if you are trying to build, especially in the city of Memphis, if you are trying to build a fan base for soccer, it has to be done through the Memphis teams, right? Through the college teams, like, because I think it's just, and the 901 FC team as well. But I think specifically in terms of the University of Memphis teams, it is so important to say, listen, we know you're a Tiger fan. Now, look, you got Lady Tigers and Men's Tigers, and they're playing for the AAC championships this week. Like, go out and support them. Go out and support the renovations they're trying to do to the soccer pitch, to the facilities, to on the South Campus. Like, go out and support them, because this makes Memphis better. This makes the University of Memphis a much better program, athletic department as a whole, when everybody is winning, when everybody is having the opportunity to take in those resources. And so, yes, to me, this is the main point, right? To me, it's the main point is you already have baked in fan base because it's the University of Memphis. And that to me is the most important thing is that baked in fan base, plus we're available. You can come watch, come and be you saw it for free. You even saw it at the Lady Tigers home opener. The basketball team's home opener a couple of days ago. They did a whole thing where they had they pitched it to the Memphis City school systems as a field trip day, and they brought all these kids from all over the city of Memphis out of school and brought them to the El Marone Fieldhouse, and it was packed to the gills, and it was so loud on ESPN Plus. It was incredible, and it's the kids, it's the babies, man, and like that is so smart. Whoever came up with that idea at the University of Memphis to do that is so smart, because I guarantee you there were some young ladies and even young men that were in those stands that day that go, man, that was a blast. I had a good time, and I want to keep watching it. And now you got a Tiger fan for life, and you got a basketball fan for life. Why not do that with soccer?
Yep, and that is you hit the nail on the head. That is really the whole premise and the whole point of this episode, is that somebody in Memphis is a University of Memphis Tiger fan, but they are not a soccer fan per se. But you get an example of, twice in the last 3 years, the Memphis women's team has hosted an NCAA tournament game on campus, right? The men's team has hosted an NCAA tournament game on campus. They're hosting the conference tournament on campus. And that's an opportunity where you might not be a soccer fan, but you're a U of M fan, and you 100%. Can go to that game. And the hope is that by already being a Memphis fan and going to support the University of Memphis at a soccer game, you then latch on to the sport of soccer and say, wow, where can I go from here with this? Memphis 901, we've got a professional team in Memphis. Boom, I'm there. The U.S. is hosting the World Cup in less than 2 years. Boom, I'm there. And that's my idea. Now,
I look at it even in the business sense of what we do at Bluff City Media. I always talk about entry points, right? Like, you want to give, or even on-ramps, if you want to call them on-ramps. Like, I don't expect everybody that sees this podcast to go, man, you know what? Automatically, I want to become an insider with Bluff City Media, pay $5 a month, join the Discord, get insider articles, the free the content that we do for our VIP insiders. I don't expect that. I don't expect that to happen at all. But what I do want to try to do with even at Bluff City Media is give fans on-ramps to our content. Because if you get one person on-ramped onto our content, then they might enjoy it. Hey, I really like Lawrence Dockery. You know what? I might really like the Anthony Sane show as well. Or I might really like the Grizz 901 post-game show. Or, you know what, man? Their YouTube page looks pretty dope. Let me check out some other stuff. And then you start getting fans for life. Right? Like, you start getting people who are engaged not just in that one on ramp of the 901 Soccer podcast, but now they're watching Tigers Untapped on a Tuesday, or they're watching On the Bluff on a Tuesday, or they're watching No Bluffing on a Monday. They're engaged with our live shows. They're watching the post game shows with Tigers Live. They're doing all these. Then oh man, there's this little dope little interview drop with Danny Barlow, who's a UFC fighter from the city of Memphis. Like, let me watch that. Like, that's kind of cool. So you're getting on ramps to, and I have a feeling that like that is what I want to see with the University of Memphis soccer programs, is creating on ramps for their fans. Like we can get you're already a fan of the University of Memphis. That's an on ramp. Now let's go to the soccer game. It's free. Let's go watch them play. Man, I really like that freshman middle back. Is that what they call her from Japan? What's her name?
Ai Kitagawa.
Yes. Like, I love, wow, she just did something incredibly well. Let me go watch them again. Let me go watch them. Now, all of a sudden, wait, they got a professional team in Memphis too? 901 FC? I could go watch that. And those guys are so ingrained with their fan base that it's unbelievable. It's like a damn Lobos environment on the weekends with professional players. Like, it's crazy how awesome it is down there. So there's just on ramps, and I think that the college soccer programs are great on ramps for new soccer fans.
And so I've got a couple. We're talking about brand awareness and brand familiarity, and even for the University of Memphis, there's, I mentioned the women's team. They've hosted the NCAA tournament twice in the last 3 years, right? Funnily enough, both times it was against LSU. Again, a brand that people are aware of. If you watch any kind of college athletics for any amount of time, you're aware of LSU. So when they hosted LSU in 2021, they drew 1,309 people. When they hosted LSU last year, they drew 2,073 people. And then I guess kind of on the flip side of that is, you might be aware of the University of Memphis having a men's team, but when they host SIU Edwardsville, not a brand that you're nearly as familiar with, and the crowd for that game was 1,029. Still impressive, and the men's team still won that game. But again, we're just speaking to brand aware. Like, people, like if you're not anything of a soccer fan, but you hear Memphis is hosting LSU, you're there, right?
Right.
And then I do also want one thing, not especially related to Memphis, but college soccer and brand awareness mattering. I think it was earlier this year, and Florida, like we touched on, Florida State is one of the premier powers in women's college soccer. Clemson has a really good women's soccer program. They've got a really good men's soccer program. They just won the national title last year. I think they've won 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 or something like that. But Clemson, South Carolina, is a big rivalry game in all of their sports. Those are 2 schools that do not like each other. Those are rivals, right? Clemson and South Carolina, I believe it was their men's team, played each other. And I think earlier this year, they drew like 6,500 people for that. I mean, that is outdrawing the majority of the teams in the USL Championship where Memphis 901 FC plays. Now, that is an outlier because that's a rivalry game, and that's not the average. I'm sure Clemson or South Carolina is not drawing 6,500 people for every game, but that's a data point that's out there that I think should be taken into account, right? And one thing is, there is a contemporary example for people who either don't know or don't particularly care about a certain sport, really getting behind their college team in that particular sport and seeing that energy kind of spill upwards, trickle up into the professional sport. Do you know what that example is?
What is it?
Women's basketball.
Yeah.
Because, the WNBA was a wasteland for years. Let's just be real. That's what it was. It was, Bill Burr had a whole routine about it. And then really, I think the turning point was probably like 2014, because at the college level, UConn, everybody knew UConn. Everybody knew Tennessee with Pat Summitt. And really, that was probably about it. I think Stanford's coach was out there for a long time, but neither here nor there. Then in like 2013, 2014, Mississippi State upset UConn in the final. UConn had won like 85 straight games or something ridiculous, and Mississippi State beat them. And really from there, I think that was the catalyst for the explosion of the popularity of women's basketball. And it started at the college level when teams like Mississippi State, South Carolina, LSU, Baylor, Louisville, Iowa with Caitlin Clark, and that the last 2 years with you had Angel Reese v. Caitlin Clark at the college level between LSU and Iowa, and then that all kind of spilled upwards into the WNBA. And you looked every week, the WNBA was breaking records for crowd size and TV ratings.
Right.
So this is something, the pathway for getting behind a particular sport at your college of choice has worked in getting people into that particular sport at the professional level. Does that make sense?
100%. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think another good example of it is Nebraska volleyball.
I had that written down right here. Yes, they sold out their football stadium for a volleyball
65,000 people at a volleyball game last year. And now Nebraska volleyball is a legendary, like that whole area is just volleyball rabid, right? So it's not like they're introducing new fans to volleyball. Volleyball's massive up in that area of the country. But again, 65,000 people at a women's volleyball game, at a Nebraska women's volleyball game, is absurd, to the point where now there's actually professional leagues that are coming in that area that are there, that they have a professional women's volleyball league now in the United States because of the level of fandom that's up there. So I mean, there are multiple examples of college sports being the vehicle to make a boom for a specific sport in an area, right? And I think soccer is, while it is the most popular sport in the entire world, there are some definite things that the United States that they could do to catch up, if you will. And again, leaning into that on-ramp of college sport, the college athletics is I think the best way to do it. And
just the one other thing that I wanted to just kind of, maybe a little bit pat myself on the back and give the company a shout out. Last year, I mentioned Clemson won the national championship on the men's side for college soccer last year. I was in Louisville for Bluff City Media covering the NCAA College Cup, the College Cup. It's the Final Four national championship of men's college soccer. And that was Clemson, Notre Dame, West Virginia, and Oregon State. Right. And, I did a little bit of research going into that, and the crowds for both West Virginia and Marshall going in that NCAA tournament, you wouldn't think West Virginia, like if there was a state in the country that you would think would just hate soccer with every fiber of their being, you'd bet your money it would be either Mississippi or West Virginia. And funnily enough, Mississippi State women's soccer is the number 2 team in the country, and they're breaking attendance records this year. But I looked it up, and West Virginia, both WVU and Marshall, their crowds for their NCAA tournament games that they were hosting were 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people, which is, again, does anybody in Morgantown, West Virginia necessarily really care about soccer? Maybe, maybe not. But they were getting behind the college team. Yeah. And if you get enough people doing that often enough, there's gonna be some trickle up. And then, you had, like I said, Clemson, Notre Dame, West Virginia, Oregon State at Lynn Family Stadium in Louisville. There was a lot of Notre Dame gear there. Notre Dame's a brand. Everybody knows Notre Dame. Clemson, they were there. They took their band, which was awesome. Not like their full football band. I think it was an alumni band, but they had 20, 30, 40 people over there on the far side of the stadium with saxophones and drums and trombones and all of that. And that national championship game, it may not sound like a lot, but they got 4,500 people there at a neutral site for teams that weren't maybe very close. One of them is Oregon State. Like, I don't think anybody from Corvallis is flying to Louisville for a college soccer Final Four. But I say all that again to say, I think there can be trickle up. Now, I guess the question is, how do you finish the bridge, right? You've bridged from non-soccer fandom to college soccer fandom, how do you build the bridge from college soccer fandom to professional or international soccer fandom? I think 901 FC has a good relationship with Coach Mulrooney's team over at the University of Memphis. They usually play a preseason game against them every year. I know this year when they played them at South Campus, there wasn't an official attendance announced because it was free, but it looked like the stadium out there at the track and soccer stadium was full. I mean, it was a very vocal, boisterous. Everybody had a good time. So, and this may not be the perfect episode for that, but if you're 901 FC, I think that's a partnership that should continue to encourage and nurture and grow. And that was something that I remember vividly in the post game that night. Stephen Glass said, people are here because they like 901 FC, and people are here because they like the Memphis Tigers. And I think that just further solidifies our point in that if you're a fan of the University of Memphis, go support the soccer programs, and you might just find yourself as a soccer fan.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think here's what 901 FC could do to really go and draft a University of Memphis player and bring them onto their team. Honestly, like this is going to sound wild. I love the NFL, but I don't have a team. I don't have a team that I'm rabid for. I have basketball teams that I'm rabid for, but I don't have an NFL team that I am like completely infatuated with, a massive fan of. I watch it all. I will say this. I do pay extra close attention to the University of Memphis football players when they're in the NFL, like whatever team they're on. Like I have a Philadelphia Eagles hat upstairs that I never wear, but Kenny Gainwell plays for, right? Jake Elliott plays for them.
Yeah.
When Anthony Miller went to the Chicago Bears, I bought some Chicago Bears swag, right? Like
Anthony Miller was a year behind me in high school at CBHS.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
You know what's even crazier is he couldn't catch the ball in high school.
No, I know. That's
every time they threw it to him, he dropped it.
Yeah, that's the story about him. But no, like those kinds of things. And I think that it is. I think the way the on ramps are the players, right? Like if you fall in love with a player from the University of Memphis who's been wearing Memphis on the front of their kit for 3 or 4 years, when they get taken to somewhere else, then I'm going to follow that person. I'm going to follow them. I'm going to follow them as their journey goes, right?
And I think a good example of that is Maya Jones, who was the captain for last year's women's team.
Right.
Was I think a second round pick in the NWSL draft. If I'm not mistaken, she went to the San Diego Wave in the NWSL.
Right.
I don't know how many San Diego Wave fans there are in Memphis, but if you're a women's soccer fan in Memphis, you have that. If you're looking for a team to cheer for, well, I already cheer for the University of Memphis. Oh, this former Memphis Tiger plays for this team. I guess that's who I'll cheer.
That's who I need to pay attention to, right? When
I don't know that the USL has a draft. I know Major League Soccer has the Super Draft, although I don't know how seriously any of those teams take it anymore. But I do see what you're saying. If 901 FC could find some way to have a Memphis Tiger on the team, I don't think it would hurt in terms of public relations. I wouldn't be against it.
Well, and I'll say this. I legitimately think that you mentioned you kind of patted yourself on the back a little bit. And I like to do that. It's that and I think it's okay to do that. I think that's why media is so important. I think that's why what we do with the 901 Soccer Podcast is so important, right? Like, because if we were to take if we were to take and go in his first year, in his first couple of years of you doing the soccer podcast before you came on board with Bluff City Media, there was probably who's actually listening out here? Like, is anybody listening? Is anybody paying attention to what I'm doing here? But you've stuck with it, and you've continued to amplify the teams that are in the 901, the soccer teams that are out here. You've continued to promote and talk and go to games and share thoughts about players and games and the coaches. You've talked to the coaches. You've written articles about these things. You've done podcasts about them. And I think that longevity, like that consistency, has allowed for people to go, man, I like that. Like, we have media coverage of these teams. It's an important enough thing to be covered. And so I do think that what you do, I think that what we're trying to do with the 901 Soccer Podcast at Bluff City Media, helping you kind of using our platform to amplify your voice in this is super important and that's what I would recommend to all media, not just Bluff City media, but all the media in Memphis. Pay attention to what's going on at the University of Memphis. Pay attention to what's going on with the Memphis 901 FC team. Like, go out, enjoy the game. I guarantee you that if you called the SIDs, if you call Winston Roberts at the University of Memphis, or if you call Josh Clayton at 901 FC, and you ask them a couple, like, hey, I want to come out and do something, you don't think they would roll out the red carpet for you? Like, they would say, come on down, roll out the red carpet, whatever you want, whatever you need. And so I would challenge, like, yes, in the immediate future, it might not get you the clicks that you were looking for. But man, like,
you got to sustain it. You got
to be sustained. It's got to be consistent, and you got to be dedicated to it. And that's why you were when we started Bluff City Media 2.5 years ago, you were one of our first calls, like, because of that very reason. So I really do appreciate what you do. And I think looking back, you might not go down in the annals of history as we look back and we write the stories like they did with Game of Thrones. Like, they might not. You might be the Jamie Lannister of media. Your name's not even in the book, But I'll say this: you will have played as big a role as of developing soccer in the in Memphis.
I don't want to go as far as the whole United States. I'll just settle for Memphis.
We'll go Memphis. So we're not called the United States Soccer Podcast. We're called the 901 Soccer Podcast. So I do think that's important.
And speaking to the sustaining part of it, and I think this will be a good place to wrap it up. Is, first off, thank you for saying all those kind things. I will say there was one game this year, and I'm not going to mention who it was, but they know who they are. After one of the games this year, this individual came up and we were chatting, and this individual told me, we really appreciate everything that you do. You're our only voice in the city. And that meant a lot to me. So that was super cool. But you talk about sustaining the coverage of it. We are currently right now in the middle of the biggest, most important, most awesome stretch of soccer in American soccer history. We had, in 2023, the Gold Cup was here in the U.S. This year, Copa America, which is South America's conference tournament, basically, here in the U.S. 2025, the Gold Cup, which is our conference tournament, and the Club World Cup. So that's like Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barcelona, AC Milan, Manchester City, Manchester United, they're all coming here. River Plate, Boca Juniors, that's being played here in the U.S. as well, including right up the road in Nashville. The 2026, the World Cup, the real World Cup, is here in the U.S. And then in 2028, the Olympics with Olympic men and women's soccer are in L.A. and probably a little bit more spread out throughout California. So, I mean, now is a great time. If you're thinking about trying to get in on the soccer train, get in on it now. I'll never tell you can't get on, but it's going to be a lot more fun these next 5 years than it will be the following 5 years. So if you want to get in now, because and if this is to all the media outlets out there, and this is a conversation that I've had, is part of the frustration, as you mentioned, it may not get in the first hour that it's up there, it may not get 25 million clicks or 100,000 views or whatever, and that's just something you just stick with it. There's a ton of high-level soccer coming here to the U.S. real soon, and I think if we can get a trickle up of interest from the college soccer game and get a trickle down from the interest in the international game, I think it's a great time to be a soccer fan.
And I want to throw a challenge out to the University of Memphis. You now own the largest outdoor stadium in the city. Mm-hmm. And it is undergoing a massive renovation, and it will be a beautiful, beautiful stadium. In 2026 is when the updated time frame for when it's supposed to be done. Mm-hmm. 2026, 2028, you now own it. You have the right to bring whatever you want to bring to that place, right? To make it profitable, to make it, during the off season, make it, hey, it's not just sitting empty. Like, you got some things you can bring. How awesome would it be to have a friendly for the women's national team, men's national team, whatever it may be. And right before that, hey man, let's bring some soccer kids in. Let's bring some let's do some stuff around that. University of Memphis, I challenge you, think outside the box when it comes to this, because that could be a way to build a fan base and then capitalize on those teams coming in and focus and shine a light on Brooks Monahan, on Richard Mulroney, and say, let's bring these guys in and let's do something and focus the attention back on the University of Memphis men's and women's soccer teams. And you might see an uptick in your fan base with the University of Memphis.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because I noticed that right before COVID, this was a trend that kind of started, and then COVID kind of shut it down. And then this summer, I noticed usually when there's big friendlies, be it club friendlies, international friendlies, they all play in NFL stadiums or they play in soccer stadiums. This summer, I noticed a lot of soccer in college football stadiums. Brazil and Mexico played at Kyle Field at Texas A&M. Chelsea and Celtic from Scotland played at Notre Dame Stadium. Chelsea and Manchester City played at the Horseshoe at Ohio State. Manchester United and Liverpool, I think, played in Columbia, South Carolina at Williams-Brice. Somebody played in Chapel Hill at North Carolina. So it would not be without precedent. That is something that is happening much more frequently, where instead of having to deal with whatever ridiculous red tape that the NFL wants to throw up if you want to play in their stadium, there's a lot of college football venues that are hosting international type games, and that is something that you read my mind. I didn't know if we were going to have time to squeeze it in on this one, but that is something that I do think with the renovations, I think there might be. Is there going to be more space in the corners? Because that's always one of the big reasons I've heard that you can't put a soccer game in there, is because the way that the artist formerly known as the Liberty Bowl is constructed. There's just no space to take a corner kick. So if that is a change that is being made on a full length and width field,
you would have to tell me the dimensions of what would be needed, but I would be stunned if they didn't have enough room over there. Like, I'd be stunned if they didn't have enough room. I've seen 901 FC's small area, and it's professional field. Like, their corner kicks are in a very tight place too. So it's not like they have more room than the AutoZone stadiums. The walls, the little movable walls they have. Yeah. They have much more room than that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's plenty of room.
That is definitely something I saw. I'll just throw this example out. The Mexico, Brazil, and obviously I do not, as great as it would be, I don't know that the University of Memphis would have the pull to get Mexico and Brazil for a friendly here. That would be unprecedented. That would be amazing. But just that's the example. When Mexico played Brazil at Kyle Field, they drew like 87,000 people. And between that and then they had a country concert. I don't remember who I keep wanting to say it was Garth Brooks, but I don't think that's right. But between the soccer game and the concert, Texas A&M made $6 million off of those two events.
Come on, man.
And
what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? That is the money that would renovate a stadium, right? Like renovate a facility for the on the South Campus. Like that's crazy talk, man. Like, and I'm telling you, I'm gonna go, if that happens, I'm going to stand on the field next to you and watch you shed tears, because that is going to be. I
don't know that I would shed tears. I would probably be more kid in a candy store and just be all over the place.
Could you imagine 65,000 soccer fans filling up the Liberty Bowl?
That would be
to watch a friendly.
And you mentioned it. 2026 would be the perfect time to do it. If you wanted to have, because within the sphere of Memphis, your closest cities that are hosting World Cup games are Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, and Kansas City. So if you look at it and just hypothetically, like, I don't know, Honduras, they have a very large population here in the United States. There's a lot of Hondurans living here. I think there's even a Honduran restaurant right not too far from South Campus, right down Getwell, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So just for example, Honduras is playing one game in one of their 3 World Cup games. They're playing in Dallas, and then they're playing in Atlanta. Well, it wouldn't be too much time, effort, travel stress for them to, before the tournament starts, play a friendly against like Cameroon or somebody at a renovated Liberty Bowl.
Well, I'll say this. I think that a lot of the red tape that has been put up for those kinds of games before, those kind of matches prior, it was when the Liberty Bowl was owned by the city, and this is the same city council that has kept the Coliseum up for 30 years, sitting empty. So I don't necessarily. Today's
not the day to get me going.
Today's not the day to get into that. But I will say this: I think that with the ownership change, with the University of Memphis now owning the campus, removes a lot of that red tape. That's what I think. So I hope it does. It should. It might not, but it should.
Hopefully, if I might get a chance to meet Ed Scott at the if the men's team is playing in the AAC tournament final on Saturday, hopefully I might get a chance to just kind of wander over and say, "Hey, Ed, Lawrence Dockery, Bluff City Media.
Let's go.
Here's what we're thinking.
Here's what we're thinking.
Tell me if it's feasible."
And let me tell you, Ed Scott is a outside of the box thinker. So I'm excited.
He's been here for 3 months. I love the dude. You want to talk about? I don't think the university athletic department has better salesman than Ed Scott.
Yeah, he hasn't been here long enough to be able to say he's the best AD yet, but I think he is well on the way to being the best AD Memphis has ever had. Well on the way. I would agree with that. So anyway, we'll get off Ed Scott. The love train. I love that. I think he's awesome. So yeah.
But I think that's a good place to call it a night tonight. I had fun with this. I hope you out there in listener land, if you're thinking about getting into soccer and aren't sure, get behind the Tigers at the University of Memphis, and hopefully that will allow you to spill over into Memphis 901 FC and the U.S. national teams.
I'll say this: even if you can't watch it, throw on ESPN Plus if you have a subscription and just turn the game on, please. Just turn it on and have it playing in the background. Even if you can't watch it in the moment, you can go back and rewatch it later. But those live numbers mean everything to the University of Memphis. So
here's another thing I would say. The premise is getting non-soccer people to soccer, to professional soccer fandom, using college soccer as the vehicle. If the car runs out of gas at the college soccer, and the worst thing that happens is that the University of Memphis men's and women's teams have more support than they do now, I still think that's probably a pretty good thing.
That's a win. That is a win. Absolutely.
Well, that will do it for us tonight. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm Lawrence Dockery. He's Kenny Stubblefield. You can find Bluff City Media on Twitter at Bluff City Media, on Facebook as well, and on YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.